Welcome, everybody, to another UFOB Experiencer interview. Today, we have Christopher Robinson, who's had precognitive dreams for over 50 years. He's co-author with Andy Boot of a book about himself called The Dream Detective. He's been the subject of a documentary, Premonition Man, by John Beecher, as well as a new book he co-authored with Grant Solomon and Jane Solomon by the same name, The Premonition Man, UFOs, Aliens, and Spirits in the Afterlife Help a Psychic to Dream the Future. Christopher was also featured in the book The G.O.D Experiments by Gary Schwartz of the University of Arizona. He's been featured in many, many other books and documentaries as well, so if you just search his name, you'll find them. Christopher has also worked with local law enforcement near his home in the UK to solve cases as well as prepare for cases to come. And Christopher also warned the US of the 9/11 attacks before they happened. So an amazing, amazing man, and we're so happy to have him here today. But first, let me bring on Adam and Remzi. Remzi, the founder of UFOB. Adam, one of our team members and co-host of the Experiencer interviews here. And how are you guys doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. And you guys?
Good to be here, as always.
Good to be here.
Happy to be here too. Yeah. So without further ado, we'll bring on Christopher. Hello, Christopher. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you all doing?
Doing great. Let's get you up top here.
Okay.
And there you go. So, Christopher, your life has been amazing. Over 50 years of precognitive dreams. You've been studied by scientists and psychologists. We'd like to ask you, how did it all start? How did this start? What age were you, and what happened?
Yeah, so different things, different aspects of it started at different times. I grew up in my teens with Doctor Who, the BBC time-traveling TV series.
Oh, yes.
And of course, I don't know, every kid didn't watch it, but I certainly hated to miss one. I mean,
right.
You know, it was my favorite TV program, and that was just, just incredible. When I got to 1971, I got married early. I got married when I was 19. My son was born in 1971 in June. And at that time, I was living with my wife and son in a small village in a trailer park, mobile home park. And we were kind of high up on a hill. And I came home from work, I don't know, I guess around 9:30, 10 in the evening. This was September. And for some reason, I parked my van, walked around, stood on the porch that goes into the home. And for some reason, I stopped and I looked up, and I stood there for a few minutes. And I think at the time I wondered what I was doing. But then I saw this kind of up there. It looked like a kind of a boat shape object. And it was just moving around and changing color. And I thought, what on earth is that? Anyway, I stood there for a bit. My wife then opened the door and said, "Are you coming in?" And I said, "No, come and have a look at this." Now, this is, I think, important to say here. Always, I'd said to myself, I guess probably prompted by watching Doctor Who and things like that, that if I ever saw something like this, I would make sure I wasn't the only person. And so she saw it. I said, "Forget the dinner." And I went to the home next door, and I went round the village green, and it ended up with 50 or 60 of us on the village green looking at this thing I don't know, a couple of hours. We watched it for a couple of hours.
Wow. And you had that group that you
we
said,
had a whole group.
Yeah, go ahead.
A whole group of us. And you know, some people brought their kids out, and we just it wasn't doing anything crazy other than just moving around is crazy. You know, it was sort of over there and it moved over there. It got bigger a little bit. It went smaller a little bit. It got fainter. And we just, well, we knew that this wasn't an aeroplane. They don't do that.
Right.
It wasn't a helicopter. I don't even think helicopters stay up in 1971 for 2 hours or more and change color. But they don't
look like boats, right? You said it looked like a boat, or is this a different one?
Yeah, it wasn't round, but it was that kind of a shape.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you know, it wasn't a triangle, but it was kind of triangular if you take the ends of the boat. You know, it was that shape.
Okay.
And we just watched this thing. And then it disappeared. It just went, a streak of light and gone. And the newspaper, I don't know who phoned the newspaper, somebody did. They came up and took a picture. And they took the picture over a water tower. In the picture, it looks just like a straight line, but he didn't have a telephoto lens, I don't think. And, you know, but we saw the shape of, you know, like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. The story went in the newspaper. That was the end of August or September. There'll be a date on the newspaper cutting, I can't remember. And then in the October, I was with a friend of mine on the roof of a building putting an antenna mast up.
Mm-hmm.
And we were quite well placed in as much as we could see, you know, horizon to horizon, because we were on the top of the building. We were above the trees and the other houses, and I'm just, if I'm facing forward how I was, the mast is in front of me there. In fact, you can see a mast, funnily enough. I don't know where that but you imagine I'm looking at that mast and I'm holding these things, and I looked over to the northeast, which would be that way, and there was this orb, golden shiny orb, and then all of a sudden it went to the other horizon, and it went as fast as that, like 3 or 4 seconds to get from right over there to right over there.
That's pretty fast.
It's really fast. And it changed, as far as I can be sure, it changed shape a little bit, and it changed size a little bit. So I don't know whether that was because it got closer at some point, but it was pretty much round the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But it did seem to flatten out at some point a little bit, and it was glistening. It was like, it did look well, golden metallic, and it just stopped. So we're now looking over there, and Malcolm's, who was with me, what is that? And I said, I don't know, but it's just there hanging in the sky, you know. And we now know, because of things we found out afterwards, that it had moved about 100 miles.
Oh, okay.
In that period, in that just few seconds, and it was now over the city of Oxford.
Okay.
And that's where it was filmed by the film crew, that's available on the internet now. And anyway, so we just watched this thing, and it came back, and then and I just absolutely convinced that was not from this planet.
Uh-huh.
Nothing goes that fast and stops. Nothing comes back the other way and stops. I mean, not in 1971.
Right. That's what I was going to just say. 1971 was the year, right?
Yeah, 1971.
I was 1 year old when you saw that.
Yeah. I mean, yes, they'd been to the moon already.
Right.
But as we didn't see anything that would do that. I mean, I don't know whether the SR-71 was around in 71. It may well have been. That was probably the fastest aircraft there was.
Mm-hmm.
But it don't stop and go back the other way.
You're right, and it doesn't look like what you saw. It doesn't look like a little saucer,
and it doesn't look like no. So anyway, we told a lot of people about that. I phoned the airport. I phoned the police to see if there were any other reports. They took my details. It was the film was broadcast on the news that night. So my neighbors came in and said, "Oh, you're not mad after all." I told them I'd seen a UFO, and they said, "Yeah, and I'm Father Christmas," that kind of thing. And but there it was on the news, the film of it, and what they say when they interviewed the experiences, as we call them now, the film crew that saw it and filmed it. They say that it must have passed overhead and then they looked up and saw it. Well, it did, because I watched it pass over their heads from where we were.
Right.
I watched it stop. Or Malcolm did as well. I don't know how many other reports there were. I believe there were some. But anyway, a few, again, difficult to remember how long. But I think that was end of October. Probably early the next year. Two guys are standing on my doorstep. If I remember, one was in uniform and one wasn't. And they wanted to talk to me about the sighting. And I said, sure, whatever. And they were really interested in what made me look up. What made you look? What made you think? You saw the other one. They knew about the other newspaper story. And I said, I don't know. I don't know. I was being really careful. I said, I don't know. I don't know what made me look up. If I'm honest, I think perhaps there was some sort of strange urge to do it. But, that's probably been built up with all the experiences I've had since. But I looked up. Malcolm looked as well. We saw it. It was filmed. They wanted to take us back to where we saw it. Two guys said, can we take you back to the location you saw it? And then I'm up for that. Yeah, why? I'm up for most things. So yeah, I said, well, yeah, why not? So we went back to exactly where they were, and they got this like instrument that looks up and measures angles, and a bit like a surveying thing.
That's interesting that they brought in equipment, because now it sounds like, hey, let's bring you back just so you can show us. And while we're at it, we're going to set stuff up in case it comes back while you're showing us. Yeah.
Well, I wish it had done.
Yeah, I mean,
they were looking, there was no Google Earth you could look at and maps. It was the best you had was a street map and an ordnance survey map.
Right.
So they were interested in the angle and the elevation and what did I think? And they went away, and they came back again a few months after that, just out of courtesy. And they said to me something like, because I can't remember the exact words, something like, what you saw, we've been able to find a radar sighting, and we've calculated that it traveled 100 miles in 3 seconds. And so there was a conversation about that. But the exact words I remember after that is one of them, and I forget which one it was, said to me, "We haven't got anything secret or otherwise that can do that." And they're the words that stick in my mind. We haven't got anything secret or otherwise that can do that. And that was it, you know. Strange
for today.
Yeah, even I guess even today. Yeah, I mean, I didn't do a calculation until quite recently, when I've managed to track down the film. But if you have 100 miles in 3 seconds, it's something like 90-something thousand miles an hour. I mean,
yeah, that's impressive.
You know, and then you stop.
Yeah, and you said you tracked down the film. Hopefully, maybe you can give us a link to that in the.
Yeah, I don't know whether I already did, but
oh, you may have. Okay, but I'll try to have it in the description.
Yeah, if you want me to play it now, I can go and play it now.
Yeah, want to do that? What do you guys think? Yeah, let's do that. You can hit the share button, and it should share.
This is Farmer Tom Parsons' field at Radford near Enstone in the county of Oxfordshire, and it was on this field that the ATV Today film unit were filming this morning when at just before noon it was noticed up in the sky, flying from west to east, was what can best be described as a gleaming object leaving an intermittent vapour trail, and the speeds between these vapour trails certainly caught our attention, and immediately everyone said UFOs. Well, what does the film unit themselves say about it? Now, the cameraman at the time was Noel Smart. What did you see, Noel?
Well, first of all, we saw what appeared to be a very large vapour trail, much thicker than the normal vapour trails. And when this vapour trail finished, it stopped at a straight line, you know, as opposed to fading out. The object, which was obviously circular and an orange-yellow colour, seemed to stop very slowly, and then very quickly out of frame, and it went so quickly, just couldn't follow it. It seemed to be an amazing speed, it really was.
What would you say it was?
Well, what can you say? It was definitely not an aeroplane, couldn't possibly be, not a jet, not with a vapour trail as thick as that. It was going so quickly, you just couldn't follow it. And when it stopped absolutely dead, and seemed to hover for, what, 15, 20 seconds probably, and then off she went again, leaving these fantastic vapour trails.
Chris Fewless, you are the production assistant on the unit. What drew your attention to the thing in the sky?
Well, first of all, it was the vapour trail, which seemed to suddenly appear. The line in the sky before the vapour trail actually appeared was also visible, so it looked as though it must have passed overhead without us noticing it at all. But then the vapour trail itself was, may I say, sort of curly, as though the object that was leaving it was in fact spinning. Then, looking at the object itself, you could see with the naked eye that it was in fact spinning, and orange and round.
And what do you think it was?
We've talked, all of us, the unit, of course, we've talked about it. We all think that what we would like to say really is that we don't know what it was, so we call it a UFO.
Well, there are the opinions of 2 of the unit. All of us saw this, and now you are going to see it. You are going to see what we believe to be the first moving film of a UFO.
That's definitely very interesting. You know what's interesting is the vapor trail. Did you see that? You didn't mention the vapor trail. Did you see the vapor trail?
I didn't see a vapor trail on the direction that way. there was some trail, but it really was, obviously he's doing it with a camera and it's picking up stuff perhaps that we didn't see. It was more of a, yes, it's a trail, but it was more of a line.
Oh, okay.
That it left behind, but it was not always there. I mean, as it came back, they obviously didn't see it go that way. There was nothing going that way. No trail, nothing.
Yeah.
But it's true, and I've obviously looked at the film since, and I've tried to scan my memory. How much of the vapor trail did I see on the way back? It was just a very faint line.
Okay.
But the object looked bigger than that. It was the size of a large pea to me.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you don't know what lens they had, and you know, when you start taking pictures of things, they can look tiny.
Right.
If you know, I mean, and how far were they from it as well? I mean,
yeah, I'm guessing that has had to have happened. But Rem, you've done so much research on this. Have you heard of other objects creating a contrail or a vapor trail of any sort?
Yes, I know another case. I think it was in South America, and I believe it was only seen with infrared cameras. So it happened before, but it was not seen with the naked eye, but only with infrared. That's the case I know, but I don't know the exact year or exact place, but should look that up.
Okay. Yeah,
I would say it was definitely spinning. I've got no question about that.
Okay.
Because that was the impression that I got. I think it was spinning in both directions. I've looked at frames. So in those days when that was shown on television, you know, it was 625 lines, really poor quality.
Right.
You know? They had it, when I tracked it down, they had it scanned at 640 by 480, I think.
Okay.
I paid that company well, first of all, I said, have you still got the 16 millimeter film? And they said, yes, we think we have. And I said, if I pay you to rescan it, you know, in HD, will you? I've got a 1 gigabyte file of that 3 minutes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And
cool.
I've still framed, obviously, frame by frame. You can see the spiral.
Wow.
The vapor trail.
Wow.
You can. I mean, you don't need much imagination to say I can see a spiral in that. And of course, they say that on the interview at the time, which to me means more than anything. You know, it was spinning. Yep, you can look at the HD scan of the film and you can say, you know what, it was spinning.
Here we go. Rem has something to share with us here.
Oh yes, that's another one with a vapor trail. I've seen that in some of the TV programs. Yeah, I mean, you know,
that's the one.
I think what I saw in one of the, you know, many programs that show these things is that they said it was not so much a vapor trail, but they was discharging something.
Ah. Okay.
Yeah, that's scary, but it fits a dream from the time.
Oh, you say it fits a dream from the time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let's hear about the dream from the time.
Yeah. Some probably between 2012 and 2014. I kept records of all my dreams. Most of them I've destroyed now. Because I just got fed up with nobody being interested in it. And, you know, I started getting grandchildren, and I think my wife was complaining the amount of space they took up in the house with all these volumes of dreams. But I had a dream that they were engineering our atmosphere. They were doing something with our atmosphere, like spraying something in it.
That's fascinating.
Then obviously I saw that. I mean, my corona dream, I mean, you know, did they spray that into the atmosphere? Did it really come, or did they leak it in China? You know, I mean,
what's your corona dream? I'm sorry.
Right, my corona dream was 6th of September 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And I was back in time. I was about 10 years old. I was in my grandmother's house, my mother's house. I tweeted that so many times, this dream. And she picked up a bottle of Corona soft drink. Now, in the old days, in England, there was a company called Corona. And it was probably the biggest soft drink company at the time. And the bottles had a wire cork china flip top.
Okay.
So you could close them again, like a wire thing.
Yes.
And we were under the stairs in her house where she used to keep the Corona. And she said to me, Christopher, come into the cupboard. So I went into the cupboard. She picked up a bottle of Corona. She shook it and she flipped out, and we got covered in it. She said, and the words, I've got the dreams online and I can send you it, but it's something like, Corona is going to spread across the world and can kill up to half the population. There are too many people, blah, 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 a whole story.
That's fascinating.
And that was September the 6th, 2019. So I talked to some friends in Intel here and in the US. You know, what's going to spread across the world and can kill up to half the population, you know? And my take on the Corona was I didn't think the bottle was anything other than symbolic. I thought it might be a CME, you know, and
right.
It hits the planet and takes out off one side of the planet. I mean, but you know, I didn't think of a coronavirus. But would I know? No, I didn't know. You know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a whatever the person is that deals with viruses, virologist, or
right.
you know. But
it was certainly symbolic.
Certainly symbolic. It's symbolic in more ways than one, because there are codes to my dreams. So I was in a cupboard, and when I'm in a car or in a cupboard or in anything with C, I always reverse that to CIA, so they need to be told. I was under the stairs, US. They need to. I told people about it. We talked about it. In fact, somebody came to meet me in London early December, and we talked about that and what it might be and what it might mean. And then, of course, Christmas 2019, I had another dream where there was an alien, and the alien in the dream, I'm at my home here, and I'm getting really, really sick. And this alien, not a human, a bit like an angel, but not, what does an angel look like? But not with big flowing wings, like, you know, they draw them in biblical stories, but painted a red cross on the front of my house.
Not good.
And said, Christopher, you mustn't go to hospital. If you go to hospital, that's the end. And that morning when I woke up, I thought, and I felt awful. I did phone our doctor's system. I got an appointment to go to a clinic 5 miles from my house. How I got there, I don't know. I managed to drive there, and I managed to park and walk to the thing. And I went in with a mask on. And I saw this doctor, and he said to me, why are you wearing a mask? And I thought, well, in the dream, I was told well, we all wore bloody masks, didn't we? But at the time, I said, I don't want you to get whatever this is I've got. And he said to me, and I remember very well, Christopher, you have picked up a very nasty virus. Right now, we don't know what it is, but we know it has started to go round. And then he said, you are well on your way to pneumonia. I'm going to give you these tablets. You must go home. And this was the Saturday before Christmas, 2019. He said, if you are not better by Monday or Tuesday, or not feeling that you're moving towards being better, you must go to hospital. And I looked at him, I said, I'm not going to no hospital. And I got really sick, and I thought that was it, and I refused to go to hospital.
Mm-hmm.
If I'd have gone to hospital, maybe that was it. We wouldn't be here today.
Well, yeah, I mean, we know that in the early cases when people went to hospitals, they did too much to them and
Yep.
probably caused their death.
Caused them to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with my heart issues and everything, they'd have probably ventilated me, and that would have been the end of it.
Mm.
That dream said, do not go to hospital. And
Yeah.
I didn't go. And I survived it.
Wow.
I mean, my doctors here think I was probably one of the first few patients at their surgery, but
Mm-hmm.
they picked it up at the hospitals. They knew there was something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nearly I think it was another month before
Mm-hmm.
they started announcing what was happening.
Right.
I think it was like January the 21st, so this was December the 21st. But and in that dream I was told that you can get this again, but it's never as bad the second time. And I got it again and again.
Oh, did you get it again and again?
Yeah, I think I've had it 5 times now.
Wow. I mean, I feel our family's been lucky. We, knock on wood, have not even ever gotten it. We've been very lucky, but that's fascinating. But
that was a corona dream.
Yeah, that's the corona dream. Okay, so let's pivot. And I wanted to go back to your first, when you knew that you would, well, what do I want to say? I'm thinking of the event where your near-death experience, I think it was
where I'm in Holland and have a heart attack.
Yes, and that's when they said that you'll have to live between both worlds?
Yeah,
Well,
so,
let's do that, please.
Yeah. So,
and what year is this? I'm sorry.
86, this would be.
Okay.
This would be 86. I was working on an investigation, and I was with some people, and I was in a small boat. We were on a lake, probably 10 miles outside Amsterdam, and it was 2 or 3 in the morning, something like that, and I'm asleep. Then I feel these dreadful pains, and I'm still half asleep, but I'm becoming conscious, and then I must have slipped into an altered state, and I rise up through the boat, up into the sky, and I'm desperately struggling to breathe, and I end up in, I'm not going to say it was a spaceship, but end up inside some kind of enclosure, a room, which is brilliant white, and there are beings of, I always call them light beings because they're not really solid. And the voice said, Christopher, you don't need to breathe anymore. You're coming with us. And I'm thinking, oh, no, I'm not. And I said, no, I'm not coming with you. And I'm still fighting for breath. And they said, look, you're coming. Eventually, everybody comes. And I said, no, I'm not coming. I'm not ready. And then they said, why are you not ready? And I said, who will help Frank if I die now, if I come now? And I think I explained, it's almost as if I didn't need to explain too much about who Frank was. But the end of this bit is, because you haven't asked for something for yourself, we are prepared to allow you to go back on condition you live and work in both worlds. And I just said yes. I don't think I had a clue what it meant, but I just said yes. Yeah, I said yes, of course. I will do whatever you want me to do, and be in both worlds. And with that, I sort of fell back into my body, chest pains, got my breath back, calmed down. Next morning, went to a hospital. They did a blood test and they said, we think you've had a heart attack. That was it. And it came back home. Now, this is where it gets even more interesting, because when I got home, now at that time, I had 2 places to live. I had a girlfriend and an apartment that she had, and I had a home in Luton. So I had a place in London, and I was in the process of selling the house. My ex-wife and my son and her 2 other children were living in it. So I came to Luton. I came to the house, and I knocked on the door, because I think I probably didn't even have a key, because they're living there and I wouldn't have had a key. But I remember knocking on the door. My son Paul came to the door and he said to me, "Oh, Dad, you're still alive." And I said, "What do you mean you're still alive?" He said, "Last week, I dreamt you died. I was talking to you in a dream, and you died." And I thought, "Oh, wow." And I said, are you sure?" He said, "Yeah. I didn't expect to see you again." And then, of course, I told him my experience. He was 15 at the time. Yeah, if it was 96, yeah, he would have been 15. And so that was the first strange thing. And then not long after that, within weeks, my grandmother was dying. She'd got cancer. She was in hospital in Northwood in North London. She'd been staying with my mum, or between my mum and her other daughter, and not far from where I was living, in a place called Rickmansworth, and that's not far from the hospital. So I went and saw my mum, and I said, "I'm going to go and see Nan." She said, "Well, for goodness sake, don't tell her she's going to die, because she doesn't know." And I thought, okay, well, please don't mention anything, because she's coming home. She got lung cancer. She still had a way to go. She wasn't, at the point where it was the end. Anyway, I went to see her. So she was in the hospital. She was bright and cheerful and perky. And she was in there for blood transfusion and just observation, I think. And I sat on the bed, or by the bed. I initially sat on the bed, and then I sat on a chair at the side of the bed. She looked at me and I looked at her, and she said to me, "Christopher, you've never lied to me, have you?" And I thought, no, probably not. No, I can't think of. I said, "No, I don't think so." "No, why?" She said, "Well, you've always told me that when the time comes, I will meet your grandfather again." And I said, "Yes, I have always told you that." and it's something that for a long time I've believed. I've had lots of experiences in my childhood which led me to believe that, especially with my own heart condition and lots of hospital and people dying all around me. So I did believe that. And I told her, I said, yes. She said, only every time I close my eyes, I see your grandfather at the bottom of the bed holding his arms out, saying, Dora, it's time to come. What should I do? And I said, oh, Nan, I can't tell you what to do. How can I tell you? She said, well, I want you to tell me what to do. And I said, I can't tell you what to do. I said, but what I will do is I'll tell you what I would do. I would tell him I'm ready. But you've got to make up your own mind then. Anyway, we talked for 20 minutes or so, maybe half an hour, I don't know, all different things. And then she looked at me and she said, I think I'd like to be alone now. And I said, all right, I'll see you when you get home, because we knew she was coming, you know, back home in a day or two. I left. I got through the first set of double doors, leaving the hospital ward, to the second set of double doors that go into the long corridor that leads to the car park. And as I was just going through those doors and they shut behind me, a nurse came running towards me and said, what happened? What happened? What happened? What did you say? What did you do? And I said, I'm sorry. She said, your grandmother's just passed away, and there is no way we are expecting that. And I said, well, I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. We just talked. She said, well, would you like to come back in? Because, you know, she was on a monitor of some sort, a pulse monitor, and just flatlined. And they alerted. And I'd hardly got out of the ward. And I said to her, no, I'll leave her in peace now. I don't need to come back, but thank you. And I left. And of course, when I got back to my mum's, oh, what did you do? What did you say? But that was another big moving moment. And then pretty much from then on, I had dreams about things that were going to happen tomorrow, dreams that were about the work I was doing with police and other people. And I also did a lot of work with the Sunday newspaper. The Big Frank thing was continuing. It was a big project that I'd taken on to attack corruption in the film industry and bribery of police officers in London. I'd been involved in it since 1980. Okay. I'd set myself. It's a long story, but anyway.
I wanted to ask a real quick question. At this point, it seems as though you may have been having those dreams quite a bit. So your mom knew you were psychic in some way. She accepted it.
Yeah, she accepted it. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, lots of people back in the 70s I worked with used to say it.
Yeah.
You see, one of the jobs I did in at the time I saw the UFO, I was repairing television sets, and I would often walk up the drive to the house carrying the parts that I needed to change. And everyone thought I was weird. I mean, I'd got, a Philips 520, dead. Well, I didn't take an on-off switch sometimes. Sometimes I took a thyristor. Sometimes I took a voltage dropper. And
now, did you even know why you... I'm sorry.
I don't know why. I don't know.
Okay, it didn't come in a dream. You just knew.
I just knew what was wrong. And of course, people noticed that.
That's amazing. Yeah.
People noticed that. I mean, my introduction to the security service was I was on a boat out in the South China Sea, off Singapore Harbour, off coast of Malaysia. We'd gone out for a week's trip with my father and people that he worked with. He worked with those people. and a very important dignitary from the UK government was with us on this trip this weekend. And we were coming back into Singapore Harbour. We were probably 5 miles out still. And the boat was a Grand Banks boat, 40 foot or something. And it had a flying bridge. And they were all sitting up on the flying bridge, drunk as lords. And I don't really drink. I still don't.
It's just as fun to watch them drink sometimes.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm down in the wheelhouse, and I realise we are heading towards an oil tanker, and we're on the seem to be on a fixed course. And I went out and I shouted up, "There's an oil tanker!" It must have caught their attention that we were. I mean, these bloody things, when you're in a little 40-foot boat, they're massive.
Huge.
Yeah, and we are going right for this thing. And I'm thinking, shit. So the bloke whose boat it was tried to change course and couldn't. And he said, "I'm switching the wheel to you." So he switched the wheel to me, and I turned the downstairs, the wheelhouse wheel. I turned it to the left, and it just spun. Nothing's happening. And I thought, this is not good. And instantly, I jumped down into the engine room. I looked for the autopilot. I found it, and I pulled the wires out. And the boat went almost round the other way. And that saved us.
Wow.
They blamed me for making them drunk because they said I mixed the drinks. I can remember this thing in the boat like yesterday. Anyway, when I finished my holiday, the head officer got his chauffeur to drive me to the airport. And they gave me a small present, and he said, "You're not to open that until the wheels are up." And I said, "Okay." I didn't think there was anything dangerous, and anyway, in those days there weren't many, plane issues with terror and things like that. And anyway, I knew he was a senior intel guy. So worked with my father. Well, my father worked for him. Anyway, when we got off the ground, I opened it up, and it was a gold pen. I can't find it. I know I kept it, but I can't find it. But in it was a business card, and it was who they were on the front and who he is, and on the back it says, "We need people like you."
Huh.
And that was that. That would have been 96 Christmas, before Christmas. And I got contacted the following May, and then signed Official Secrets Act and got involved doing all sorts of things. From then on.
Your father worked for him, so your father was in the intelligence.
Yeah, how he was, I'm not sure. But
okay.
Yeah, how he was, I'm not sure. Yeah.
So what I want to ask is, well, first, Rem or Adam, questions?
Yeah, I think part of that part of the story got cut off, like going back to the craft with their vapor trail. You mentioned how you had a dream that may have showcased what that vapor trail actually was. I think we briefly heard a little bit about it, but just if there's any more detail.
Well, the one you showed me, okay, so from 1986-ish, I wrote down all the dreams I could remember. From 1980, middle of 88, I wrote down almost every dream, and I wrote down the dream even if I could only get bits of it, because I knew something was happening. Then when I had the Lockerbie dream, and then Lockerbie happened, that was what, 21st of December 88. From pretty much the 30th of December 88 to way into 2015, I wrote down everything. I kept an absolute record of everything. And some of the UFO, some of the off-planet communications were that it's almost as if there was some kind of an engineering thing going on to save this planet from carbon dioxide, the ozone layer. It's almost as if they've been trying to protect us. And you know, they do something, spray something in the atmosphere to close the ozone hole, and you know.
You mean we didn't help do that?
Oh. No, honestly, I mean, you know, they are really angry that we're still cutting down the rainforest.
Yeah, you know, this is another important thing is you had your near-death, well, before near-death experience, you started experiencing and witnessing objects in the sky, and then you had your near-death experience. They said you're gonna have to live between both worlds, and you began to have dreams at that point that were precognitive. And then I guess my other question to that was, were your dreams always, well, it sounds like your dreams are always symbols, but there's never any direct like being telling you things.
No, that's not correct. I mean, sometimes there is a direct instruction.
Okay.
So I mean, if we go past Lockerbie, I told the police that there was going to be a plane blow up from Heathrow Airport that night. Described the plane. Pan Am 103 blew up that night, taking off from Heathrow. I'd already made a statement. Within minutes of it blowing up, I got a phone call. You'll either be at Scotland Yard in the morning at 9 o'clock, or we're coming to get you. And I said, don't worry, I'll be there. Lots of, I suppose you can call it interrogation, lots of interest about that, because, you know, there'd been little things that they'd noticed and I'd noticed over the years. But this is now massive. You have told us that a plane is going to blow up tonight. Describe the plane, the circumstances, and it happens. And you're, I mean, anywhere else you'd be a suspect, wouldn't you?
Right. And at this point, isn't it true that, or I don't know if it's at this point, you tell me, when they actually had assigned a person that you would call in particular?
After this.
Oh, after this. Okay. I mean, I had people anyway, because I was involved in lots of little projects, but this was a specific thing. I was given a separate line, telephone line. You know, this was before computers. You know, I was given a separate telephone line and a dedicated fax machine to fax all the dreams the moment I woke up and wrote them down to them. So I've got a record, but so have they. And that started in 1989. You know, Lockerbie was 3-4 days before Christmas, and this procedure started, you know, straight at the beginning of the new year. I think it took them a week to get a new phone line put in and send me a fax machine. And then there would be, I won't say daily at that stage, but I'd send it daily the moment I woke up. But sometimes there'd be things in there that I was wanting to talk to them about more. And sometimes they saw things in there that they wanted to talk to me about more. And we just went on documenting.
And then more officers got involved. And it's funny because the initial officer wanted assistance. He was probably doing this pretty much on his own. And I remember him saying to me, I've asked for 2 other people to be with me when we do this, just so that I can convince myself it's really happening. And I get that. You know, if I'm only telling him and he's only talking to me, you scratch your head and you think, are we both mad? So there was now there were more people.
Mm-hmm.
And I got introduced to more people.
Mm-hmm.
And more people were interested, and different groups were interested. And of course that went right on. It went right on till 9/11. After 9/11, it's funny because I reported it, I don't know, 2 years before the planes were going to be hijacked and crashed into a city. It wasn't until the Arizona experiments that I was absolutely sure it was going to be New York. Could have been somewhere else until then, but you know, that was that. The first.
Real quick, what was it about the Arizona experiments that helped you kind of pinpoint? Did it just happen to be that you were doing the experiments at the time, or did it help focus you in some
right
way?
So during the experiments, one particular morning, as I was waking up, I had a vision in the hypnagogic part, you know, halfway between sleep and waking, and I absolutely saw in full color the first plane looking up. And I now realize I was looking at what was to be the fireman's video, going straight in, and that was imprinted on my mind, and that's when I absolutely knew. And then something was going on after the experiments. We met somebody who lived in New York, a billionaire friend of Schwartz's, and I was talking to him. And I said to him, I wouldn't be going back to New York if I were you. And he said, I live there. I said, yeah. I said, well, if what I've seen is going to happen, it ain't the place to be. And then I came home, and then I wrote a letter to the embassy and sent them copies of the Arizona experiments. But I'd been seeing that for 2 years. In fact, I saw it in 1993.
Oh, wow.
The first attack was February 93. I was filming with Sandra Martin and a film crew that was with her, because she worked at the Discovery Channel in New York. And they spent, I think, 2 weeks with me making a documentary in 1993. And I drew 2 towers out of playing cards. You know, you get a pack of playing cards and you do that and you do that and you can build the towers. And I knew then that they were going to fall. And they didn't fall. You know, the truck bomb went off, but the towers didn't fall. But I knew they would at some point in the future then. But I forgot all about that when I started reading it again. Yeah, it was like 8 years before.
Right.
So when I started dreaming it again, I thought, could be London, you know, could be New York. In honesty, it could have been a lot of places until the Arizona experiments, and I know where I am. I know where I am, and I know, and honestly, if you look at what I think they call it, the fireman's video, when you hear the plane screaming in and they pan the camera up and you see it hit the building, that is exactly the vision I had weeks before.
That's
exactly of the vision of that. It was like I was standing in the street as a time traveler watching it. And of course, that's what I'm sure happens. You know, we move forward and back in time.
Yeah.
In different dream states, or they take us. I mean, you know, when I've been in their craft, and I'm certain that at least part of me has been in their craft, you know, because when they were doing one operation on me, I was looking out the window. I could see the earth below.
That's so fascinating because there's so many abduction stories of people being worked on. They look over and there's the earth out a portal. And
exactly, that's exactly what I had. But you see, they got me into real trouble because so I had a torn diaphragm. I'd lifted some very heavy boxes onto my head, and somehow I'd torn my diaphragm. And I'd been to the hospital, and they were scheduling me for an operation to fix the diaphragm tear. I'd been through all the scans and everything, and met the surgeon, and we're going to do it in, whenever he's got operating time. In England, if you've got money, you can have your operation tomorrow. If you're on the NHS like me, you might wait up to 3 months for it. So I'm waiting for the operation, but it's getting more difficult and I'm feeling more discomfort. And this particular night, I find myself laying on a operating table, let's call it that, looking out the window to my left at the earth below, and my right arm is out strapped to some kind of machine or board or something. I can't move that. I can move everything but that. And these light beings are there, and I'm not frightened at all. I've never been frightened of them. And they're doing something, and I didn't know what. And then I'm returned to Earth, and I'm still asleep. And then at some point, I wake up in the morning, and I'm in my bedroom, and my wife's on my left-hand side because that's just how we sleep. She's on that side, I'm on this side. She doesn't want to be the other way around, and I don't want to be that way around. For 36 years, we've slept like that.
That's how it is.
That's how it is. So anyway, I wake up, and I said to her, I've had the most incredible experience. She said, I think she said something like, you mean a dream? I said, yeah, but it's more than a dream. And I started telling her. And then when I was getting up, she said to me, oh my goodness, look at your arm. Well, if I can find a pen, there was like a drill hole there, a drill hole there, and a triangle. And the bruise was absolutely as if you'd drawn it with a pen.
Yeah.
There was no spread. A bruise spreads out, doesn't it? No,
right.
Not this one. It was like a stamp.
And I'm sure as you know, tons of abductions, people have either the rows of dots or the triangles, and
I didn't know then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but now you do.
But now I do. Anyway, so I went to my doctor. I took it to the doctor, and he looked at it and he said, what on earth have you done? I've never seen anything like it. I said, well, it wasn't there when I went to bed. Where the hell did you sleep? I said, no, I was at home. And he just looked at me. He knows I'm strange anyway. So this would have been 2003, 4, somewhere around there. I can't remember exactly. It'll be on my records at the hospital and the notes. So anyway, he looked at it and he said, he said, I don't know what that is. He said, but it doesn't look infected. But he said, if it starts to get hot, starts to swell, he said, you come back and see me straight away. Well, it didn't. It faded away in about a week, 10 days. I got a picture of it somewhere and I can't find the phone that I took the picture on. So anyway, that was that. I've been operated on, and I'm thinking, yeah, the marks though. I mean,
oh yeah,
and the dynamic of it.
You're welcome to always send us anything later after the interview. I'll put it up.
Yeah. So anyway, I get to the time when I'm going for my operation. So I turn up at the hospital. They put a band on you with your name, checked me in, did blood pressure. So I'm in there for the operation, and I turned up at the hospital by myself. I didn't need an ambulance or anything. And then I've got my little overnight bag and things. So you go where you're going to wake up after the operation, leave all that stuff there. And then I walked to the operating theatre, and we're waiting outside. There's a few people waiting for operations. And there's like 10 theatres anyway. It's a big hospital. Anyway, I get called to go in. And the nurse said, you can walk into the theatre. You don't need a wheelchair. I said, no. So I went in through the doors and got in there. I saw Dr. Jane, who's going to be the surgeon. And there was obviously an anaesthetist and other people there who I didn't know. And he said to me, something like, will you be able to get up onto the table yourself? And I said, yeah, I can climb up there by myself. So I climbed up onto the operating table and laid down and kind of got in position. And the anaesthetist was here with his equipment, ready to put me to sleep. And Dr. Jane said, before I put you to sleep, I'm just going to scan your tummy and make a couple of little marks where I need to go in. And I said, yep, fine. Scan. Looked at me, scan again. Called over a colleague. He scanned. And then he got really angry. He looked at me and he said, Mr. Robinson, you have wasted this whole time. Why haven't you told us you've already had your operation? Now I'm dumbfounded. I mean, I am gobsmacked. And I said, I'm sorry? He said, you've already had your operation. I said, no, I haven't. He said, yes, you have. I can see where they've done it. And I said, no, I promise you. I said, I'm here for it today. You've got to do it today. And he said, well, I'm telling you, it's been done. What hospital did you go to? And I thought, oh, shit. Can't tell him it was a spaceship. I said, I haven't been to a hospital, which I hadn't. I said, I can promise you, sir, I have not been to a hospital and I have not had that operation in a hospital. Anyway, they got really annoyed, put a big red cross across my hospital file. And of course, every time you go in for something else, you get asked about it. Why didn't you tell us that you'd cancelled the operation?
That's fast. And again, that's a great.
I mean, that really sort of like kicked me in the face because I kind of half believed about the operation and the alien ship, and I knew the marks were on my arm. There was no doubt about that. But now I'm being told the operation's been done.
And what's fascinating is even though he's telling you already had the operation done, he sees no incision. He has no.
He doesn't know. No, all he could say was that whoever did it has made a very neat job of it, because he can't see where it was done on the outside, but he can see there's no tear now on the inside. There's no incision marks outside.
Right.
But he was telling me, he said, whoever, I remember the words exactly, whoever did it has made a very neat job of it. And there's nothing on the outside. No. Went in through my arm. I can't tell him that either.
Right. That's, yeah.
You get to the point where you got to seriously think, who can I tell what? It's like you didn't say anything for years, but now you're getting really crazy shit.
Right, and you just become another statistic for miraculous healing or operations by ET. And see, here's another fascinating thing. And again, Adam and Rim, if you guys have a question, sorry, I keep asking all these questions, but is is what always messes with my mind is when abductees tell their stories. I have a problem figuring out whether they're physically there or it's a conscious thing. Because yeah, I just have that issue because it's usually seems like they're taken out consciously and not physically.
Yeah, but and that's why I said, kind of what you're half there. I mean, my wife doesn't think I left the bed. She said, I don't think you physically went there. But the marks are on your arm, dead for real. I mean, no kidding. I mean, this is really there. And of course, I've Googled triangle marks since then. They seem to be quite common. Anyway, I mean, so there's notes with a red line through them. When I was, so if we now jump to about 2015.
Okay.
I got heart issue, a real problem with my heart again. They need to open up some arteries, right coronary arteries, almost completely blocked. So I've had an angiogram, incidentally, where they often strap your arm and go in through your wrist or your groin. So I'd had it through the groin, the first one. And they'd done whatever nuclear perfusion scans, and
oh yes, yeah.
And so my cardiologist said to me when we were doing the angiogram, the second one through the arm. This is really so funny. I'm strapped there like this, and I'm thinking, shit, this is just like the spaceship. There's this round scanner thing above me. And there's a monitor and you can see inside my chest and my heart beating and everything. And he said to me, now I've got you. Tell me what really happened about the operation.
Wow.
They say you had. And I said, Dr. Hassoun, his name is. Lovely guy. I said, Dr. Hassoun, I didn't have an operation. He said, you did. He said, somebody did something. And I said, well, somebody did something, but you're never going to believe it. And he said, try me. He said, I've got you now. You ain't going anywhere. Try me. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is so like the operation in wherever I was up in this, whether it was half there or what, I don't know. My arm's strapped out. And I thought, is this coincidence? Is this kind of telling me something? Anyway, I told him the story. And he said, I don't think you're mad. He said, because I've heard things like this before. And I thought, thank God for that. He said, have you ever asked them to fix your heart? And I said, no, I've never asked them to fix your heart.
Well, it's interesting. It's great that it's funny that he had to wait for you to tell him, because he probably thinks he's crazy too from the things that he's seen.
That it could well be.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's really, I'm glad that the story ends that you told him and he went, okay, well, I've seen other things like this before. And that's very, very interesting. It makes you wonder how many doctors have seen things like that.
And have never been in a position where they felt comfortable to acknowledge it.
Right. Yeah. But before you went on your 2015 story, I know Rem had his mic open for.
Yeah. No, please go on.
Yeah.
Yes, because I heard about the Arizona experiments, but
yes.
I want to know what that is all about.
Okay, I'll tell you what it's all about. I had witnessed so many terrorist attacks. Some we'd prevented, many we didn't. There were hundreds of them. I was involved with investigations, with, finding information about, and it was nearly always terrorist attacks that dreams led me to. Some murders, but mostly they were terror attacks. And I had, as I said, dreamt of the 9/11 attack. And I first dreamt of that in 1999. So 2000, the year 2000, I was working with 2 what they call special branch teams on a kind of a terrorist investigation. I'm not going to go into what the details were, but I was working with this particular group in an undercover situation with 2 other undercover people. And during that investigation, I became aware of some corrupt police officers. And I had to think, I can't go and tell them what I suspect, but how do I deal with it? And I decided, because I knew which telephones were being monitored, to call one of, I'm sure mine was monitored too, would have been, but that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to talk this over with somebody, knowing they were listening, and knowing the people that were listening were way above the investigation team where the problem was. And I discussed this particular leak and problem information. And this was 2000, very early, February, something like the 6th or 7th, 2001, I was called to a meeting. This is how it happened. So I'm asked to go to a meeting with some other officers, other agents, and the meeting is to be at the Madingley American War Cemetery in Cambridge. It's a long way from 40 miles from my house. I don't know why they wanted it there, but I went there, 8 o'clock in the morning. I turned up at the war cemetery, and I turned up early, which was customary for me to do that. I would never be late for a meeting, but I'd like to be there early and just have a smooch around, see what else is going on. So I walked around the graveyard for a bit, and these 2 people, 2 senior officers, came to see me, and one of them I knew and one of them I didn't. And the one who I didn't know said, "Do you know why we've asked to see you?" And I said, "Yes." And the other one said something like, "I told you he'd know," because he knew me really well. This other one was a bit of a prick. I don't suppose he knew me very well at all. He said, "So why are you here?" I said, "I'm getting the boot. I'm being fired. It's the end." And the other one then said, "You see, I told you he'd know." And this one, this cynical one, said, "How do you know?" And I told him the dream that I'd had that told me that's why I'm going. So anyway, they signed me off and paid me off. And I parted company with our police and authorities at that point. I'm done. They're done with me. I'm done with them. This was, as I say, February 2001. And I stayed in the American War Cemetery after they left. And I walked around and I'm thinking, I need some contact in America. I need to get to the FBI or the CIA or somebody like that. And I didn't know what kind of approach to use. You go in off the street and you're usually just dismissed as a crank. I wanted to at least do it to the point where they checked out my history, because I knew if they checked out my history, but usually they wouldn't even do that. You just it's a crackpot, and that's the end of it. They don't look. I wanted them to at least do that. Anyway, I went into the chapel at this Madingley War Cemetery, and this is, I don't know why I did it. I laid on the floor. And I looked up at the ceiling, and there was all the things to do with World War II aircraft, United States Air Force. And I got the Army one side, and I've got the Navy the other. And this is all the history of the US in World War II. And I'm laying there, and I just spoke, and I said, look, guys, you've all died for nothing if I can't prove this is real. Help me, because I know this is real. I've spent, at that point, what had I spent? 20 years? No, not 20 years, 15 years. I said, help me. I need to get to people. I need, people need to take this seriously. Anyway, I left the cemetery and came home. And I'm hoping for something to happen that guides me to a connection. And I don't know if it's the following week, a newspaper, Psychic News newspaper, landed on my doormat because I was a subscriber to it. And on the front is this story about Gary Schwartz and his lab and his research. And I wrote to him. I wrote to him at the university. I sent him a copy of the Dream Detective book that was published in 1996. I asked him, please at least take me seriously just for half an hour and look at this, because you might think I'm crazy, but I'm not. And that's where that began. He called me, I called him, we did some provisional experiments, and he said to me, did I believe in a higher intelligence? And I said, yes, absolutely. I said, I'm not sure what it is. I said, but sometimes when these beings address me, they say, Christopher, this is God speaking, if you like. If you like to call me that. And that was before the Grandmaster bit. The Grandmaster first came during the experiment. So it was, I think it is some, I don't know. I mean, people think if you're talking to God, you're crazy. So anyway, you can't win. Anyway, he said to me on a phone call one day, how best would you demonstrate to me this ability? And there are interviews of him saying this, and he's been interviewed loads of TV companies. So there's a record of what I'm telling you from him out on the internet. But I said that the best thing to do initially would be to keep it simple. I said, if you took me to, and I suggested 10 different locations on 10 different days, I would be able to document the main identifying characteristics of those locations before you even thought of them. And he said, now, he said, the night before will do. And I thought, well, the night before won't do, but it will do for now. I'll tell you, all right, the night before I'll dream where we're going. I actually dreamt it 3 months before. I'd built up a pattern of all these locations and their identifying characteristics 3 months before I went there. But I knew that I would be given the help. I didn't know when the experiments were going to be, but he suggested that they would be sometime that year when he could find the time. So in May, I did 10 days. June, I did 10 days. July, I did 10 days. I asked the questions of the universe, the beings, God, whoever. I didn't care who told me, just tell me. And we're now set, and I've bought a plane. I'm going to pay for all this. So I've bought my plane ticket. And the night before I flew, I was petrified. My wife said to me, what on earth have you done? You're now flying to the United States and going to put yourself on trial for 10 days. I said, but I know it'll work. They won't let me down. But I was nervous, petrified what was going to happen. Because I thought if the first one fails and then the second one fails, he won't bother to do the other 8. Anyway, I went to bed that night and I was beamed up into this like the Death Star, if you like, this huge spacecraft. And I'm just there with, again, this beings. And they said to me, and they handed me, and it's so funny, they handed me a lightsaber. And they said, Christopher, take this lightsaber. Go forth to the United States on your experiments. We promise you the Force is with you. And I woke up in the morning and I thought, thank God for that. And I got on that plane and it was absolutely off the charts. And that's how that began. I mean, the experiments are what they are. And the videos are online, and his scientific study that he wrote and the God Experiments book, you know, that's all there and you can see what he said. But that dream about being in massive spaceship, being given a lightsaber and being told the Force is with you.
That's
I don't know that I'd even, I don't know I would even got on the plane without that. I might have got cold feet the next morning.
that's
But I got on that plane proud and confident. And
it's an amazing story because it's interesting that and it's happened before with other abductees who've said that, they used a symbol and so forth, but it's just so great and funny that they used, Star Wars.
I know.
Yeah, if you could explain when you said you were being done in detail and what you saw and felt.
Yeah, so this is different to anything else I've ever had. I laid down in bed and I really was encapsulated in a beam. And I've had similar kind of hypnotic experiences. Something different, but I'm actually in this beam, like a tractor beam. I don't know if there are such things, but I am actually going up, and I go through the roof. I go out the roof of my house, and I'm going up and there is this, as I described it as the Death Star. Well, it didn't have like the gun on, the thing on the front, but it was this huge round, not round, but a bit, what Saturn looks like with rings. It was a bit like.
Well, while he's talking about this, could you get a picture of the Japanese freight airplane and what he saw? Because I feel like it's that thing. But anyways, go ahead.
So anyway, I'm going towards it. I am in this beam. I am going towards it, and now I'm inside it, and there are these beings everywhere, and they said lightsaber, and I'm thinking, wow, incredible. And take this lightsaber, go forth to the United States, do your experiments. The Force is with you, and I just felt, wow. And I felt this orgasmic kind of energy going right through me. And I tell you what, all the nerves had gone. You can imagine I'd been, even someone like me, be nervous, going over there and spending all that money, meeting somebody, and it's all been arranged. The intelligence people in London had spoken to him, and he'd got his permissions over there, and and I'm going to go over there and it's going to flunk. And I was really nervous that it had gone wrong. I got all this stuff written down, but does it mean anything? No, it doesn't mean anything at that point. Doesn't mean anything until you get to day one and it all fits in. But after day one, I just knew that this is off the charts. And Schwartz, you watch his interviews, he'll tell you. He's told the world, meeting me changed the way he sees the world.
We'll see.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make that mark.
And this was 2001?
I flew out there on the 28th of July, 2001.
Okay. Because in 2003, I think is when, because I read his book, The Afterlife Experiments, and that was 2003. So yeah, that's fascinating that you got to do that with him in 2001, and he said that you changed his life and his perspective.
Yeah, his interviews are there, and you know, he won't take them back. Why would he? No, he's
right.
You know, he was extraordinarily proud, I think, that he'd seen something for the first time that nobody else on the planet had ever seen in an experiment. And
that's the thing, is they were scientific experiments set up to with a scientific method and tested. And what was interesting in the Afterlife Experiments is he never said, okay, these guys are real, this is the deal, and this is how it works, and it's real. I always felt like in the final chapter or epilogue, he had said something to the effect, well, what it seems is this is happening, and it's still not concrete, but
I don't think he said that with me. I think there are lots of interviews where he said Christopher is the real deal.
Yeah.
Really happening.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've got 40 hours of interviews with him.
Right.
You know, I mean,
plus the
we filmed everything. He filmed everything and I filmed everything. So he'd come to the hotel, he'd film himself leaving the house, getting to the hotel, opening the dreams. I would be filming it. He would be filming it. You know, I edited it up into little short programs and put them on the internet. Do you know how many people have watched them on YouTube? 20, 30, 50? It's people are not interested, are they? This stuff
I thought you were going to say 20, 30, 50 million.
No, nobody's watched them.
But you know that I think what's important is it's out there so when
it's been there, it's out there,
yeah. But it's amazing because I think right now I believe people will start doing their own research and finding them. And
yeah, I mean, you know, why did Chris Mellon want to see me?
Well, tell us about that. Well, you know what else is interesting is you also sent me the link that was it Jack Sarfatti that sent you the AP?
Yeah, we communicate quite a lot.
Well, yeah, he's I didn't know about him. I knew about the APEC conferences, and I've heard about those. One of the guys on YouTube, Alien Scientist, is always looking into propulsion and interested in this stuff. But I thought it was fascinating just that Sarfatti has also had a contact experience. He's a physicist. And I loved what he says, because he said the same thing Hal Puthoff said. Anyone that says that these UAPs are doing things outside of our physics is wrong. They're not physicists. They general relativity and quantum physics can describe these things. Yeah.
I trust him on that, because I'm not a physicist either. I'm not even a bloody scientist. You know, I'm somebody that went out there and made a lot of noise in the world, you know, catching criminals and upsetting police people. I went after the corrupt ones. I mean, you know.
Well, what was fascinating with watching Jack and the link that you sent me was that he really put an emphasis on the fact that CIA was created in 1947, and one of their first questions was, how does the consciousness thing work?
And how do they fly?
And how do they fly? The two questions that the CIA cared about, consciousness and how they fly. And now we're learning that really it's all kind of actually a mix. There's the consciousness, or like we're going to be interviewing Ray Hernandez next week, and he kind of took over Edgar Mitchell's group, and his thing is we have to think about this in the reference of all of this is consciousness based, and it's just different modalities that everyone's that all these people are having contact, and so it'll be fascinating. But again, just your stories have been just a testament to that. Adam or Rem, any other questions?
Yeah, can you show the YAL 1628 craft?
Yes,
the Death Star.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing was kind of like you know what Saturn looks like, with like the thing and then a ring around it.
Yeah. Yes, that's this one. Let me save this image real quick and put it into.
But I mean, huge. I mean, just like, You know, just like enormous.
Oh, you know what? I'll just. Sorry, I'm trying to rush.
Like
when I
3
don't...
aircraft carriers.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, huge anyway.
Okay, so
Like a small planet.
yes, it's similar to that.
Yeah, exactly like that. Because I've got a photograph of Saturn that I took, and there's your planet, and there's your ring around it.
Right. And this, there's another lady in New Zealand. I forgot her name. She's an abductee as well, and she's been on this, and she described it as you. It's just incredibly huge. She said that Saturn part, where the ring is around the middle, was the hangar bays.
Yeah,
I think that's right. I think that was the way in.
Yeah, and she said
this one was seen on radar. This one was seen on radar, several radar stations.
Yeah, no.
It's 1986.
1986. Well, that's when all this weird stuff kicked off with me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, and she said that when in the hangar bays, you could see through the wall, so you could see space and the stars. And
you certainly could. Looking, I don't know what would have happened if you looked up, but certainly around you could see it. Yeah,
that's fascinating.
It's like you were in the rings of Saturn. Yeah.
And quickly, you said you saw all kinds of beings. Could you describe all the different types that you believe you saw?
As I describe them as light, and they do have shapes. The ones that I would clearly say, I wouldn't say they had tall heads or anything like that. I'm not sure that I would be able to define the top of the head, but this part would be pretty much like us. I don't think I could say that you could define a neck between the face and the body. It's not like there's a head and a neck and a body. There's a face and a shape. And they kind of just move. They do have eyes.
Sure.
They are just, if you tip them slightly this way,
almond shaped almost.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen what people call the greys. To me, these are not that defined, but they are that kind of shape.
Right. I was just going off of your saying there were all kinds of them, so I'm guessing.
Well, yeah, I mean there are. I mean
that you saw on that craft.
Some of them are actually just faces in orbs.
Okay.
Some of them are just an orb with a face in it. The ones that have been into my house, and the ones that came to see me in Berlin, they were orbs that, I don't know what the right word is. They were like plasma, but they had small faces, and they all came together. And as they came together, the light got brighter and brighter and brighter. And the voice, with the Berlin one, the voice said, "We are some of the souls of the place you are being taken for the experiment tomorrow." And that came like a crack out of a television set. My wife freaked. We're in the dark bedroom, and there is a television over there on the wall somewhere. We're like in this kind of a little hotel room. And there was this crack, and then this spinning lights that came together in a big central one, and it was like lightning. It was like plasma. And then they said to me, "We are some of the souls that were killed at the place you are being taken for the experiment tomorrow." Because I was doing experiments with it, in Germany. So I needed to know tonight where I'm going tomorrow.
Oh, so where were you going? I thought you were referring.
I didn't know where we were going because it was randomly selected, like the Arizona experiments.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the Arizona experiments.
No, I've done these all over the world.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I imagine. So
I'm with a German TV film crew.
Oh.
And of course I did about 3 different German TV stations, but with this one I wasn't in Berlin for this particular. I was in we were in a place called Lüneburg. But anyway, yeah, all these thousands of souls came together in this huge bright light, frightened my wife to death. I mean, she was under the covers quicker than light.
Real quick, your wife, you've been married only once. This is
she is my second wife, but we've been married 36 years.
Okay, so she's used to this, obviously, and she sees. But here's another interesting thing. Caspian, one of our moderators, his mom and himself witnessed many things, and orbs were very much part of that. But he noticed that they would not see the same thing all the time. Does your wife see the same thing you see, or hear the same things you hear when these things happen?
She told them she didn't want to be taken out of her body and go on the journeys very early on. So they kind of leave her alone. But this particular one in Germany, she was with me, and as I say, we were in bed, and I was thinking, okay, I've got a dream about where I'm going tomorrow. You know, where they're going to take me for this experiment. I think we did 3 on this series for these people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether they ever showed it on TV or anything, because you go abroad and you make it, and they show it in their country, and you never see it.
Right. Yeah.
But there were, I mean, these souls came together, and thousands of them. But they took me to Bergen-Belsen.
Oh, interesting. And that was one of
explains it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. But back to my question though, your wife saw the same thing you did. She saw
the same thing I did.
All right.
And it's like it came out of the television set. I mean, from that direction.
Did she hear what you heard?
I don't know whether she heard the voice. She was straight under the covers. Frightened to death. I mean.
Okay. All right.
I can ask her. I mean, I can ask her. No, I never have asked her.
Yeah, it's interesting because again with Caspian, it always feels like it's perspective, and you may be on a different energetic level, or we don't know how it works, but Caspian would, like, say when he saw 2 entities in his living room and his mom was next to him, he saw like a red light coming out of their head. He saw it hit the ceiling, and there was like a wispy fog there. And his mom saw similar things, but she didn't see the light and she didn't hear them. She said to her, it was mumbling. She just heard, but to Caspian, they're saying, portal. Well, yeah. So it's,
I accept that. Very likely that's how it is often as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
it'd be interesting to know what your wife sees and hears as well.
When her father spoke to me before he died, she didn't hear that. It was in a dream, and he said, I'm going to have a heart attack very suddenly. Please don't buy the plane tickets for your wife and the kids to come to the Philippines until after I die, because if she buys them now for Easter, we won't be able to change them and she won't be able to come to my funeral. And I said, okay. So I didn't let her buy the tickets, and I didn't let her buy the tickets the next day. And then on the last day she wanted to buy them, I said, all right, we'll buy them when you finish work. And we did buy them when she finished work, because she'd already had the phone call from her mum then that he died. Yeah, I mean, and these are people that don't speak English, but I hear them in English, Yeah,
it seems like they don't need to speak in a language. They just need to send concepts and symbols and ideas.
Yeah, we hear them in the language we understand it in.
Yeah, right. That's fascinating. Ram or Adam, any questions?
Yes, can you show the newspaper articles?
Yes, absolutely. Here we go.
Yep, that one.
So let's see. Ram, did you have a particular article you wanted to look at?
Oh, maybe Chris can explain something about it.
Sure.
Well, this article, the guy that you can see with the picture, I think it's Einstein, is it, or somebody? He was an experiencer. He'd seen some UFOs, and they were doing a story about him. And I didn't know him, but I did meet him after the article. I think I'd need to read it again, but he'd seen these UFOs up a part of Luton called Ramridge, I think, and other children had seen them, and they were doing an article about UFOs. And of course, because I'd had an article about me, they pasted that in. But very interestingly, they put my story next to it, suggesting or hinting that the connection with the UFOs could be why I'm having my powers. I think it says another amazing encounter involved the now famous dream detective Chris Robinson. Chris has gone on to be a well-known psychic who appeared in loads of TV and yeah, August the 26th was that cutting. Christopher was the first person among a group of people of 60. That's right. But yeah, no, so they put me in with that as, this has happened before for him, so that he wasn't on his own, I think. The editor of that paper I knew quite well, Jeff Cox. He always said to me that he believed that the precursor, maybe that's not the right word, but the catalyst, perhaps is a better word, for what happened to me was seeing these sightings. And I think in to some degree it's true, because we're conditioned it's all a load of crap and a load of nonsense and you mustn't believe it and you're going to be ridiculed if you do. But once you've seen one and you absolutely know it wasn't, and with mine, absolutely know it wasn't an aeroplane. We're not mistaking it for something else. This is a craft that does stuff that we can't still do. Once you know that in your mind, if you're interested in it, which I was, opens up and you accept a lot more. And I think the more you're prepared to accept, the more they will show you. And that's what Schwartz said.
That's interesting.
Before I came back from Arizona, he had his first precognitive dream.
Schwartz? What happened with him?
He's never had a scorpion in his house, and he dreamt there was a big scorpion, and he got up in the early morning to go and look to see it, and it was there and obviously I don't know if he killed it, but he had to get it out of the house because they're lethal. Right. But he'd never had one in his house before. And he said, I'm like a catalyst. And that's true. I meet lots of people, and lots of people after they've got to know me start having the experiences. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, that's because you've opened up their imagination and they're imagining it. No.
Yeah.
What you've done is you've opened their horizon to the fact that it might be true. And, do they pick you? Tom Drake said he thinks I was chosen to be this person before I was born.
I definitely subscribe to that. I feel like, again, since this is a consciousness type of thing, and after researching so much of this, I believe reincarnation is now a thing for sure. I'm convinced of it.
I have no reason against that.
Right.
Some of the dreams I've had this year go a long way to convincing me that's true. My granddaughter, she was born on the 11th of July, 21. She was 2 weeks old. I had only seen her as a little baby. I'd never changed a nappy or anything. And a good friend of mine who's helped me with so many dreams and meetings after she died. She came into a dream and she took me to my granddaughter's funeral. And she said at least she was loved the short time she was with us. Now, I've been watching like a hawk for what could take my granddaughter away from me.
Right.
Immediately after that dream, I called my daughter and I said, is there something wrong with Maya? She said, oh, there's a lump come up between her legs on her bottom. I said, well, has the doctor seen it? Anyway, I went over there and she was bleeding. And the doctor had not seen it since it started bleeding. So we sent, because it's bloody COVID, you can't see a doctor anymore in England. It's all to send a photograph. So we sent a photograph and he said he would arrange an appointment at the hospital. The hospital appointment, now this is July, was going to be the 14th of September. And I said to my daughter, that's not good enough. I didn't tell her about the dream at that point, but I thought there's no way I'm letting, and I said to Lucy in the dream, I'm not going to allow that to happen. It's not going to be a funeral for my little girl. So I went to see my daughter. We took another picture. I phoned the hospital. I demanded that I could see a doctor with my 3-week-old granddaughter who was bleeding down by her bottom. And they said, send a picture. COVID, you can't come in. I mean, you know, anyway. So we sent a picture. And the doctor said, well, yeah, she said, you've got an appointment for September. I said, I'm not waiting till September for this. She said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, at least you could bloody well look at it. And I caused such a fuss. My daughter took her to the pediatric part of the hospital. And the doctor looked at it that afternoon. And she said, I've never seen anything like it, to my daughter. And she phoned Great Ormond Street Specialist Children's Hospital in London. And we were there on the Monday. I was still worried. I've been worried all the way through. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, she had an MRI because they found a lipoma on her spine. And they were treating her for this strawberry hemangioma. And she'd been all right, but I wasn't happy. And I said to my daughter, send another picture to the hospital. So she sent another picture to the hospital last week, last Thursday. Nobody had looked at the MRI. It was sitting there in somebody's in tray. The doctor that we sent the picture to decided to go and look at the MRI. She didn't order it. It was ordered by the spinal unit. She then phoned my daughter at 1:15 in the morning and said, we need you at Great Ormond Street on Monday morning. I've booked a scan. Be here at 9 o'clock with your daughter. I was there looking at the scan, and I can interpret some things on ultrasounds. And I saw this very large thing, and she saw it too, and she called in another doctor. Anyway, this was last Monday, a week ago tomorrow. There is a cancer inside my granddaughter. She's in hospital now. So from Monday, they're going to book a biopsy. The biopsy is going to be Friday. I wouldn't have that. I said, that's too long. Is there any way we can bring the biopsy forward? But I didn't want a biopsy because I didn't feel we needed to do that. We needed to start treatment. The doctor said, we're going to do the biopsy, but we can bring it forward to Thursday. Thursday morning, we're at the hospital at 7 o'clock in the morning. And she's ready. She hadn't eaten anything. She was, going to be able to go down and have a line fitted, an infusion line, a Hickman line, so that they could treat her for whatever, chemo or whatever she needed. But they still needed to do the biopsy. And the doctor came in half an hour before they were going to take her to theatre. And I said to him, how long is it going to take to get the results of this biopsy? And he said, well, it's a bank holiday weekend. He said, but we should get them within 10 days. I said, so you're telling me that, you know, my granddaughter has got a tumor in her the size of an orange, and she's a tiny little, less than 2 years old, and you're going to wait for another 2 weeks? And he said, unfortunately, we have to follow the system. I said, well, if that's how it has to be, then my granddaughter will have to die, like my dream. And he walked out, and then an hour later, the top cancer doctor came in, and she talked to me, and I told her a little bit about who I am and my heart operation and all these experiences, and that I dreamt that, you know, she was with us for a very short time, but she was really loved. She said, she said, there is a way I can not do the biopsy. She said, I shall find a bed and we'll start chemotherapy on your granddaughter today. So Thursday night, Thursday night, they got her in to a ward, and they started chemo Friday. Saturday, she had the third one today. My wife's just got back from the hospital. I've seen she's just waved to me that she's back. But yeah, I'm not going to let that dream happen, if at all possible. But yeah.
So I've always felt this way about premonitions such as this. It's like, if you're given a look into the future, you're meant
to do something with it.
Yeah, you should be able to change.
You're not being teased.
Right.
They're not sitting up there saying your granddaughter's going to die and we're going to tell you in advance.
Right. Yeah. So I'm glad that you're showing that something can be done. And
something. Well, we know something could be done with the terrorist dreams.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
Because I mean, I can tell you there have been occasions.
Right.
The police are on record in some of my documentaries saying there have been things that Christopher has said and we've done. That there is zero doubt.
Right.
You can do that.
Well, let me stop this here for the moment. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching the first part. We're going to make this a two-parter. And so we will see you on the other side. Thank you.